So I'm very excited to be here, and want to talk about the opportunity for really a global vision for XR, the metaverse, and Web3. And there's so much still, even though the metaverse is purportedly dead. There's still so much confusion around it, and it's not a place or a thing or a destination. It's really a journey. Right? And we're going to be building this digital landscape for the next decade and beyond. And the industry, despite the fact that there's a lot of utility, there's a lot of research that's already been done, there's a lot of proof in ROI, really the industry as a whole is still in its infancy. This is just the very beginning. And we can't forget now that AI is the new favorite child. Right? All technology goes through its moments of hype cycle and waning and waxing. And this is where we are. The interesting thing is that I don't hear a lot of talk about what was arguably the very first metaverse, which is Second Life. And so if you want to understand a little bit about the economics, the community, the art, the beginning of the creator economy, this is a great example. They actually grew to a $500 million market cap. That is remarkable. And the technology was nowhere near where it is today.
A spectrum of digitally enhanced worlds, realities, and business models are emerging. Welcome to the Metaverse Continuum. As we reimagine the internet, enterprises must prepare for what's next. Soon, our physical reality will be as programmable as the digital one is today. As synthetic realness evolves, the question of what is real will be found in authenticity. Rule-breaking, horizon-shaping computers are already being built. The time is now for businesses to harness new and emerging tech. Come, meet me in the metaverse.
So I love that concept of programmable world, synthetic reality. All of these terms, they're placeholders, right? I don't even think we'll be using the term metaverse in the future. So I wanted to show this slide because it tells you a couple of things. One is that, yes, it's a huge economic opportunity. Also, that the projections are all over the map. No one really knows. The challenge I have with these numbers is that this means that we're just going to build the same kind of economy in this digital landscape. And I think that would actually be a missed opportunity if we do that, right? We know that the money is there. So this is Travis Scott in Fortnite. He had 12.5 million concurrent viewers. And then another 14 million, it was over 27 million unique visits to this experience. So we don't need an economics first approach. We know the money is there. So when we look at, what will you do? How will you leverage this technology? Even though, my company, we focus entirely on, business and, how to improve processes, but we have to look at consumers, right? Because consumers are still the workforce are still consumers. So we're seeing, of course, that art, games, entertainment, social media, and fashion are all colliding. That's all also part of this next generation of creator economy, right? Alvin talked about jobs being displaced. There will be a whole series of careers around creation and creation of digital assets. So there are these pathways for us to build a different type of economic structure. But the consumer metaverse right now is completely the Wild West. I mean, with NFTs, we've got, the crypto crashes. There's so much going on, and no one's quite cracked it. I think I have some strategies how to move forward. And I don't really look at it as just the metaverse, right? I look at it as a spectrum of reality. So you have augmented reality on one end. That's just a digital overlay, right? We can already do that. You can do that with your phones. On the other end of the spectrum, virtual reality. Fully immersive virtual environments. You're in a headset. It's fully controlled. You have a lot of that here, right, at the center. In the middle is where it starts to get interesting, where it's mixed reality. So it's augmented reality. It's a digital overlay that actually has context to the real world. So I don't really limit, I actually do really like the very simple definition that, the metaverse is really just the 3D internet. But I kind of look at it beyond that. Everything that we're accessing on our 2D screens is just going to live all around us and accessed through wearables. So take a look around the room. Think of your friends, your family, your kids. We are the last generation that is going to be talking about what reality we're in. We're just going to move seamlessly from real life to fully virtual environments and back again. And then we're moving from Web 1 to Web 2 to Web 3. But the reality for me is we're going to live somewhere in Web 2.5. We don't need to move to a completely decentralized construct. There's going to be a reason for us to have centralized data stores, right? So it'll be both. So we will live somewhere in the middle for at least a decade. So let's put the meta elements together. So there's an interactive portion. What is the first thing you think of when I say the word blockchain? Shout it out. Of course, you have to be challenging, Mike. Cryptocurrency, right? But cryptocurrency is really just a subset of blockchain. Blockchain as a technology is incredibly elegant and not even just limited to cryptocurrency and even smart contracts, which I'm sure you've heard about. There's the opportunity for provenance, to start building in transparency to business processes. Artificial intelligence, again, the golden child right now. But it is just one of the many technological ingredients that is going to propel us forward. And then from the network standpoint, 5G, we're already moving to 6G, edge and cloud compute, also powered by AI. Right? So we need all of these elements together. Now, when I think about the metaverse for business, digital twin comes to mind. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a digital replica of a physical asset, right? And it can be a plane, it can be, a piece of machinery, into buildings, right? To give us smart buildings. Smart buildings gives us smart cities, and eventually we will have the AR cloud, which again, it may not be called that, but that is a digital replica of the entire planet. And that digital layer will be always on, and it will be a two-way data lane. So I think the way to really look at this technology is as a convergence, right? It's not just one technology solving one problem. Right? It's really how we want to live, and then we can backfill with technology to build the future that we actually want, that we can idealize now. So there are two paths when you're thinking about a strategy. One is the practical path. And the reason that's important is that you still have stakeholders now, right? You have stakeholders, you have shareholders, you have a business to run. So we recognize that that has to continue, and we can leverage technology today to optimize those processes tremendously. But I don't believe we need the killer app. What we need is killer utility. We need to get to the point where we're using this technology on a day-to-day basis in the same way that smartphones didn't really take over until we as consumers could use them every single day. Then we started taking them to work, right? Remember, there was one point we were carrying two phones. One had all of our work software, and one had our own stuff on it. But we really need to blend those two, and that's actually why looking at consumer behavior is going to be important in this next evolution. So there, everyone asks, what are the industries that are going to be disrupted? Every single industry is going to be disrupted by this tsunami of technology that's coming today. So really, the important thing is to look at, these are sort of the 4 horizontal pillars. There's many, many other use cases, but these are all well documented, and these are all available today. You can plug in here if you're wondering where to start, right? So collaboration, training, visualization, and design. Those are all things you can do using AR and VR, especially VR. And the other important thing to realize is that everything will be 3D. 3D will be everything. It's ironic that we have taught ourselves to be entertained and to experience data on a 2D screen. And we live in a 3D world, and yet we don't really know how to interact with 3D objects in a 3D space. So we almost have to relearn that. So now comes the fun part, but the hard part. It's the visionary path. So you have to do this as a company in parallel with just using the technology to optimize your processes. But that is not going to be enough to propel you into the future. You need to start thinking about this in a much broader light. Like that future? Raise your hand. All right, how many are like, woo? Okay, so this is the moment to create a bigger vision, right? The future is not a foregone conclusion. And for this moment, we do actually have control of the technology and AI for the moment. So we have to change mindset. We have to start moving to a much more proactive and creative vision for the future. And then again, use that technology to backfill and create it. Because at the end of the day, the metaverse is not about technology. It's really a story of humanity. And this sounds like this, lofty idea, but it's really true. If we don't take a human-first approach to how the future gets built, we will just get absorbed into how AI is actually being built today. And then we're going to release it, and then we just get to go along for the ride. Or we can collectively come up with a more human vision, the things that we care about, and make sure we bring those things with us into this future. So art imitates life, life imitates art. Right? It's not an accident that augmented reality looks like, Minority Report, right? And the metaverse is how Neil Stephenson imagined it, right? Because sci-fi authors write these books, films get made, we all go see the films, we don't have a better vision because we haven't taken the time to think about these things, right? We can barely get through our day as it is. And so we just end up kind of inextricably on this path, which is fine, but it's not a path that we chose or we architected. Right? So again, this is a fundamental mindset shift. So the question I have for all of you is, what haven't we imagined? Right? And Apple's syntax error of think different, it's actually technically is think differently. But it was right, like Steve Jobs is not a genius to a level that any of you are not. All of us have the ability to kind of project ourselves into the future and think about what we want and bring those ideas back. We just don't. We don't because we weren't trained to in school, and we're on this very linear path. We're in this dynamic of, kind of work, play, eat, sleep, rinse, repeat. Right? We need to shake ourselves out of it, especially if AI now is going to give us some time back. Let's use that time to really imagine what the future is that we want. Because Web3 does give us the opportunity to reinvent ourselves. Right? We can define entirely new systems. Right? And I would start with education. Right? Alvin talked about that this morning. We don't need to push out more factory workers. We need to push out critical thinkers. We need to push out creatives. We talk about STEM. It's not, it's STEAM. We have to have art in there, right? If you ask a 5-year-old what they're gonna do, they're gonna be like, well, I'm obviously gonna ride my purple giraffe Fred, we're gonna go to the moon, we're gonna pick some candy from the candy tree, and eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. As long as I'm home by dinner, Mom won't be mad. Without even thinking about it. And we can't do that. We just don't. So another task for you, homework, is take a blank page, imagine yourself 20, 25 years from now, and guess what? This is your fantasy. You get to be any age, you get to live anywhere, any circumstance, and start to fill in a perfect day for yourselves. That is not folly. There is scientific evidence that the more you fantasize and the more you create, you actually open neural pathways in your brain, right? And by doing that, you look at the world differently. And you can change outcomes just by imagining. So it's not to say that that fantasy will come true, but it'll give you more powerful tools in your day-to-day life to feel like you have agency in how the future looks. I can't express how much the creative mind is going to be so valuable in this future. So let's cultivate that in our children. It's not even too late for us. We can still do it. And diversity. We're stuck on gender, race, and culture as the definition of diversity. We need to embrace diversity in all of its forms. And we need to create this global village. We need to work together. And we all need to come up with our own individual fantasy, because what happens is it ends up being a Venn diagram, right? We all have things that are very personal to us that live in kind of the outer Hebrides out here. But at our core, the things we care about are the things that make us human. And if we all collectively have that vision we do have this opportunity to create this, let's call it Kevin Kelly's protopian world, right? We're not utopian and being Pollyanna-ish. But why wake up and believe in a dystopian future? Let's make something better. Transparency. We're all terrified of this, right? Moving to Web 3. But this transparency allows us to change the economic construct, right? We have this notion that being true and honest makes us, as companies, give up IP or give up competitive advantage. Every single thing we think we know is a construct. The economy is a construct. Color, time, it's all a construct. This technology allows us to simulate completely new outcomes, right? Identity. Who are we going to be? We're going to have avatars that are our digital representatives of us in the digital landscape, and we're going to present differently depending on the environment. But we're going to need to know that the person or AI avatar that we're talking to is who they say they are, even if they're presenting in a completely different way. So we have to rethink what that means to be human in digital form. And value. What would a transparent exchange of value for data be, for example? What would an economy of abundance look like? Why would we recreate an economy of scarcity in an infinite digital landscape? We don't need to do that. What if we measured worth not only in money, but in how we improve the human experience? That's going to be what's important to us in the future. almost all the clips in that video are at least 3 years old, some 4 and 5 years old. And so the technology will serve us, right? You can see all kinds of use cases. There's literally infinite ways to use this technology. So in closing, I'm going to leave you with my favorite quote: the best way to predict the future is to create it. So let's create something brilliant. Thank you.